Welcome back to another episode of Worship Tech Tour featuring Storyline Church. Look at this. We've got a beautiful Avantis. We've got the Waves sound grid going on right here. We've got an LED wall, a beautiful space for you guys to learn about. I'm excited, very excited about this tech tour because in this video we have the one and only Luke Jackson, member of the Churchfront team,
Hey.
Production director here at Storyline Church. He is going to be giving us the tour and it's going to be a fun time. So everybody's arms and legs inside the vehicle. Let's embark on this journey.
Let's go.
Luke, give us context for this church. Who is Storyline?
So Storyline Church is in West Arvada, Colorado, and we're privileged to be able to meet in this building. And we kind of came in, and it used to be a Albertsons or a Walmart of some sort, and that company decided to move the location to another space, and so we had the opportunity to come in and build this out to be a church facility. So they did a great job. Building is beautiful, and we're really thankful for the space and the work that the architects did, and had integrators come in and help us with all things audio and visual in here. So
Good old Summit, right?
that's right. Shout out.
They're like 5 minutes away from here.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be the western, northern slope, like Flatirons and us and everybody kind of up in this northern region tends to have Summit on their speed dial. So
Let's talk about audio, starting with acoustic treatment of this room. Tell us what we've got here.
I mean, I wasn't here for the install of this room, but essentially we've got panels for absorption and diffusion all around the room. And so you can see kind of the multicolored panels that spread basically across the left and right sides of the room. And we've got some absorption or diffusion panels in the back. I'm not really sure what the scientific term for them are, but they have foam on the back that do some sort of acoustic treatment, but it's a pretty, it's a pretty dead space, so it's really nice to mix in. You get a lot of clarity on your sources that allow you to really dial in what you're trying to accomplish with your mix. So really nice to have the treatment in this room.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this setup in the room is not only is it functional in terms of the treatment, the absorption going on for a clean mix, but it also just looks really great. So we'll give you guys a good view of this room here. How many people does this room fit?
I think the capacity is like somewhere around 900. 998 is maximum capacity in this room. So yeah, you could easily fit about 900 folks in here without it feeling too squashed.
Okay, so then to give you guys a bigger context where we're at, we're in the tech booth right here with front of house mixing and then lighting control. And then up behind us, we've got broadcast, and is your Pro Presenter operator up there? Yep, so video control is up there in that enclosed tech booth. All right, we got some pretty nice speakers hanging up there. Luke, tell us about the PA.
So we just have an Adamson line array system in here, and it sounds great. We love it. We've got obviously the left, right, and we've got some side fills on each side for kind of our exterior wings. We've got 12 subs under the stage, and we've got some front fills scattered around as well to kind of help balance out the people who are sitting in these first couple rows between the line array system and the bottom of the stage. So sounds great. We love the system. We've had a couple of groups in here to tour the PA, and they've really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, do these speakers have amps in them? Are there amps in a rack somewhere? How does that work?
Yeah, so we're running all the amps back in our rack room backstage, and that runs not only the amps, but then the core for the system where we do some processing and EQing to the speaker setup. So this is our, our rack room for all things. So we have, this is all of our audio, kind of our sequencer up here, and power so that we can just, turn it on and turn it off with one button. We've got our Shure miking set up for the ULXDs, tie lines. We used to have a guitar cab in here and like an ISO cab that we used to use, but is out of commission now. We've got our digital snake, all of our I/O from the stage boxes, and then all the amps down below that power all the different speakers.
So while we're back here talking about audio, let's talk about your guys' recent upgrade that you did here with your stage box and mixing console.
Yeah, so we were on a M32 console for a long time. I think since install of this building, they were on an M32 in the beginning and had been up until Easter of this year. And then we switched over to the Allen Heath Avantis system. And we got the GX4816 for our stage box. So gives us a ton more I/O. I mean, actually, I think it's double whatever I/O we had with the Midas system. So we were running two SL16s back here for the Midas lineup, and now we just run one stage box back here. We've got the S-Link. We can put it on the Dante network. We're all kind of synced up over the network. So we've been really happy with it, and it works really, really well. So,
because you've got 48 ins and then you got 16 outs there.
Yep.
But then you also have, the full-on Dante network running as well. So that adds a whole other ton of I/O to your console.
Yep.
And yeah, we'll talk about the Avantis more and all the cool things you like about that. So over here, it looks like just a bunch of networking.
This is all the networking. So a lot of this is, this is working with our lighting system and connecting some of our lights to the network so they can work with light key and through our, interface there. And then, just a simple patch bay for network. We've got our Dante switches down here, and all the yellow is all the audio. And then most of this stuff is just stuff that's on the local area network for tech stuff, allowing us to patch into computers and different hardware that we're using. So really helpful. That's the core that's powering, we tap into that to edit, the EQ on the speakers, if we need to cut somewhere, if there's some sort of harsh frequency when you tune the room, we can dip in there and add cuts and things like that. Even in the dark, like you're shooting black. I mean, I feel like the blacks do really well on those Sonys.
Yeah, so while we're backstage on the topic of audio, let's talk about this rack right here.
Yeah, so when we commissioned the space, originally we had a M32R, like a smaller version of the M32 that we were using for outputs for in-ear monitors, just essentially using the buses to give musicians full control there without needing to take out outputs from the front of house console. So now all of our receivers for, in-ear units live back here, and we've got the ClearComm system receiver back here for paging as well. But then we added this expander rack to the S-Link on the Allen Heath system, to where this is essentially just giving us more outputs on that digital stage box. So this is just more outputs that we patch in the receivers to, and that still gives us that control for more outputs coming from the front of house console without actually taking up, any of the physical outputs, if you will.
Yeah, how many stereo in-ear mixes do you have coming out of that console?
So right now, we're running all of our in-ear mixes from here, and we're running 4 stereo, 4 mono. So that just gives us enough, and then we use red nets for everything else. Yeah, so we use red nets in a couple different places. We've got 2 right now deployed at keys and drums, but they're just a Dante-enabled headphone amp. So I can send the mix over Dante, for an in-ear bus or an aux out of the board, and send it to this red net that's patched in via network cable, and then they get full control via the iPad app to configure their mix however they want, and they get a really clean signal out. And for stationary spots like this, it can be a really easy way rather than deploy more wireless systems as we go. So we've got a couple of those laying around.
Drums.
Yeah, and then I've got a spare on hand. So we run keys and drums right now, and then I've got an extra in case one of them needs to be serviced, or we have an extra, like a bass player that wants one or something like that. Yeah, so we have all KSM9 Shure lineup for our mics and our capsules. Again, this is the system that was deployed when they commissioned the space. So in my list of this year, probably get a couple new capsules and adjust some of those mics so that, for different vocalists, we can adjust different sounds coming from the actual microphone. But we love the KSM9s. They sound great in the space, and really love the clarity that they give. So really primarily utilizing those for our vocal mics right now. So we're running the ULX D4 system right now. The nice thing about those is that they're all Dante enabled. So we're a pretty Dante loving church here, and so they patch out of the actual transmitter onto the Dante network. So every vocal microphone and speaker pack and all those things get patched directly into Dante controller, and then I can send them over the network to the Avantis, to other rooms if I need to, those kind of things.
Hey, if you're wanting to learn about the latest and greatest software and gear for worship tech, I want to invite you to check out our worship ministry toolkit linked below this video. The toolkit has a comprehensive list of all of our top recommendations for worship technology for small to mid-sized churches. We have all the audio recommendations, presentation and lighting, tracks and automation, live streaming gear, computer workstations. Everything is linked in the toolkit to make it convenient for you as you go about upgrading your systems. Click the link below to access the free toolkit today. Let's get back to the video.
So this was actually a custom order. Matt Powell, I'm not really the person to ask about it, but it was a custom order from a company 3 years ago, I want to say, that essentially we sent them dimensions and, ordered the shield for as big as we wanted it. And whatever material they put on the bottom, it's super easy to push and scoot across the carpeted stage. So we can move this, usually with one of us, we can scoot it around for wherever we need. We don't have to fold up the panels or have two people to lift it. You can just easily kind of push it and it'll go wherever you want to. So yeah, so I'll be the first to admit, Matt Powell is our worship leader. He's our kind of resident drum expert. I just know that we have a Ludwig kit. It sounds great. The couple things we've done to the kit over the time that I've been here is we've just changed out the heads, add a big fat snare drum, and we just recently changed out our cymbals to some cymbals from Paris Drum Kit or Paris Drum Co. And Paris Drum Co. is from a guy who plays with Shane and Shane and kind of makes these custom config kits, and they have a really good line of cymbals that we've been really happy with, have warmed it up quite a bit and really enjoy it. But we're using the Audix lineup for most of our mics, so we've got a D6 for our kick out. So for our kick in mic, we have one of the Shure Beta 91As. Kick out is a D6. We've been really happy with it. And we've got kind of the Audix lineup for the rest of them. So we've got some D4s on the toms. I'm running a 57 on the top of the snare. And we just kind of added some things, so I'm still getting used to kind of what we've got in each place. But we're running a SE Electronics it used to be one of our old overhead mics, but we're using it as a hi-hat. We've got one of these Sennheiser 609s for our overheads right now. And we just had this laying around and thought we would try it. Like I said, we used to be running these SE Electronics as our overheads, and they were doing fine, but they also were really kind of harsh on the high ends, and so we swapped them out for just something different that we had in the drawer and wanted to test out and see if it sounded good, and it actually ended up giving a lot of clarity where we wanted it. So we've been running a mono overhead, and we'll probably end up adding a second of the same as an overhead. So always testing kind of different sounds and things like that. So this is Avantis One Mix is what they call it, and essentially you can just put in whatever mix you are and take out whatever mix was here prior. So most of the time drum stays pretty consistent, so we just add mix number 11 and then it's ready to go, and they can put in whatever faders and custom layers they want to put in the channels at what levels they want. So it's been a really good solution and really easy to jump in here and add, cuts if something's coming in too weird over your ears. You can easily do a little bit of processing over here, which has been super helpful. So really cool app, yeah.
So I see we've got a Nord. Where the Nord is, the Lord is.
Right.
Do you guys ever use software alongside the Nord, or are you Nord purists?
So we've got a couple different players. We do mainly run onboard sounds. We do have a couple players who like to experiment with things like Sunday keys or running it as a MIDI controller for whatever sounds they want to run. We've got 5 different players, and so they'll rotate in and out. And so some players like to use more software than others to utilize it as a MIDI controller. One of our players has got some sort of a toggle switch where he can run both onboard sounds and a digital MIDI controller, so he can kind of go back and forth if he wants to as a redundancy option. But right now, most of our players are using onboard sounds from the Nord.
Yeah, and what about guitar rigs? Do you guys have any special standard house rigs you're using, or?
So most weeks we're running a Quad Cortex. So a Quad Cortex is a amp emulator and has a bunch of presets and things that you can edit within the actual pedal itself. So we have that available for our volunteers, and they can come in and we've got some preloaded sounds that they can just show up and kind of plug in, you know, hit a button and they're ready to go. Or they can do some of their own homework and bring some of those sounds in as well and just load it right onto the pedal that we have on hand. So it's been a great solution for us, but no amps or cabs anywhere at this point. We're running mostly digital.
So what about your bass guitar rig?
Yeah, so bass, real simple, super clean. We're not doing any extra processing except for the thing that I'll become probably an evangelist for is the Rupert Neves DI. So I just have it coming from a TU3 to this Rupert Neves DI that actually Summit turned me on to and told me about, and it is one of the warmest and cleanest and just best sounding DIs I've ever heard for, especially for things like bass and acoustic. Super clean and minimal, like there's no bells and whistles. It runs off of phantom power, and you know they're just amazing at getting the job done. So any bass that shows up immediately sounds a little bit better. In my experience so far, we used to be running just kind of a generic, maybe Guitar Center DI that we pick up, but this guy has really made it so that no matter the quality of bass that a player might be bringing in, it's going to sound great coming into our system. So it's been really good. Highly recommend. Yeah, these shotgun mics are funny because I'm about to switch them out to something different. These are the Rode NTG2s. And I think these were probably deployed before I got here and before I took over, but they're great for using them to capture sound at a distance or things like that. But so far, since we've upgraded our console and made some of these other adjustments to the stage, they just get overloaded really easily. So I'm about to switch them out to something with more of a large diaphragm that can handle more audio levels. So I probably will switch away from the shotgun mic and move more towards a large diaphragm condenser of some sort.
Yeah, I've preferred wider pickup patterns too for crowd mics, or even hanging them above the congregation is probably the most effective way to do it. All right, tell us about the Avantis Waves setup you got going here.
Yeah, so we, you know, like I said, we transitioned from the Midas kind of ecosystem, went to Allen & Heath. I can't take credit for the decision because it was made, the actual decision was made before I got hired, and they did a kind of a capital allocation to upgrade the board. And so we were actually fully out of inputs on the Midas board. So we were, you know, we were using every single channel, and every week was kind of trying to find a workaround to unpatch something and repatch something in to make it work. And so this gives us way more I/O. As a console, it's way more flexible for our needs. And we went with the Deep Pack install. We also went with the Waves interaction as well. So we've got a Dante card in the back and a Waves card for our I/O, and it's served us really well. So we've been loving it. Volunteers have been loving it. You get, you know, the 2 touch screens, the custom fader banks, all the customizable soft keys, and the 96K processing. So you get kind of improved even recording level and audio capture quality that comes from the board just built in from the processor.
Show us what those you said deep plugins, that's what they're called?
Yep.
Show us like what's the benefits of getting those when you get this console?
So the deep, I guess when you buy an Avantis, you can buy just kind of as it is stock. And so you have the opportunity to just buy it as it comes, and you can either, I guess, upgrade it later or use whatever comes with it. But essentially the deep plugins comes with all of these different plugin options, so it just gives you way more options for effects. So you've got all the reverbs and the delays and the de-essers, but then they come with a bunch of different compressors and things like that that are also part of that package. So you can add that on, and I think it's kind of just an install package that you can do there. But that gives you the flexibility to really add stuff as inserts onto channels. So we've got like the 16T and a bunch of other things like that. And then it also comes with a Dyne8 option as well. Dyne8 is a dynamic compressor that you can add on to it. Right now, we're not using the Dyne8 on channels here because we're doing most of that processing through waves, but it is an option for a channel if we need it. So it allows us to just have a lot of flexibility depending on the experience level of our front of house engineers. If I want to train somebody just on the console, I can use all the built-in effects that we have there and all the processing right within the board. Or if they feel a little bit more skilled and they're willing to learn kind of a different added on feature, we can introduce them to the Waves system as well. Right now, we're not even running Waves, auto tune in our systems. So one of the things that when we were buying our plugins for the Waves setup was for our setup, our vocalists right now don't really need it in the sense that it would fine tune it a little bit, but it wouldn't really be super noticeable, which is obviously the goal of auto-tune. But I just kind of held off because I wanted to get really comfortable with kind of more of our other really necessary processing before we added on the Waves auto-tune. So I assume we'll be adding it in the future at some level, maybe for some different vocalists here and there. But for right now, we're not using it on anybody.
Yeah. When does it get to a point where do you think it's like, well, man, this Avantis has all the fancy plugins in it already. Like, is Waves really necessary for this type of system?
Yeah.
It
really comes down to, I think, when you have, a lot of people have different philosophies. They have their opinions about the sound of a gate or a compressor in console, that they might like the sound of a compressor or an EQ on Waves better. And I think a lot of that comes from people who are experienced in the studio environment. I don't have a studio background. I've done my fair share of messing around in DAWs and playing around with plugins and things, but Waves just has so many options that if the thing I like about having Waves is that normally if there is a problem or a pain point in your mix, Waves does have a solution for some sort of plugin that can kind of hone in and refine that tone shaping experience. So I always kind of try to get us best source tone, obviously with gain staging and things like that at the console, and that's really the first step. And then we usually break off into other things. So we're most of the time just doing our high pass filters on the board, and then we're doing the rest of it in Waves for the amount of control that you get in Waves, and then the ability to kind of program via snapshots and things like that is really helpful. So you could do it both and, or you could do it either or. And so I really like the flexibility we have to use both and to go about getting our mix dialed in. So right now we're running the Prime app over on a MacBook Pro on stage at the drum rig. And so we have a Prime app, we run that over Dante, and so I can get essentially all the tracks that we would ever need. I think right now we're only running 8 tracks out of the Dante virtual sound card, and that gives me the flexibility to either break them out or to sum them into stereo channels. Most weeks we're running a stereo group for pads and synths, and the other stereo group for percussion loops and things like that, auxiliary percussion. And then every once in a while there is like a loop or something that I really want to highlight that I'll throw in a mono channel and put it on a separate channel so I can kind of ride the fader for it.
Let's dive into our just kind of lighting and presentation and the displays, all things visual. Let's start with the lighting rig.
Yeah.
Maybe back here we're at your control software. You can walk us through here. Tell us a little bit. Yeah, what did you have to do here to optimize this over the past year? Because I know you did quite a bit.
Yeah, so when right before I got hired, they had a production manager at the church that did a great job, and they were running a Grand MA console, which is a great console, gets great results, but the pain point for our church was that nobody knew how to run it. Nobody really wanted to run it. They were having a hard time recruiting volunteers for lighting. And so the guy prior to me just kind of transitioned it all to LightKey. And LightKey has been a great solution for our church. So we've been able to recruit more volunteers. Our volunteers actually have a lot of fun running LightKey and programming things in the software. So we've got a couple different, the fixture list you see here is everything we have. So we've got, color controlled house lights with white control, so we can do color temperature adjustments as needed. And then we've got 6 profiles with the Martin Rushes, and really all of the lights on the grid are Martins. So we've got the ability to grab in and load either a preset for whatever color they've got loaded in there, or fine tune and make whatever color we want to see based on kind of the look that we're going for. So we've got really those 6 profiles, 4 that are hanging from a truss, and then 2 on the ground that we can use more creatively with the gobo effects and things like that. But then we really just utilize the grid, what we call the grid, that's over the stage to kind of create lighting looks that match the backgrounds that we're going for. So big thing with Light Key is just staying organized. And when I got here, there were a lot of presets that have been saved, but nobody really knew where to find stuff. And even the layout on kind of the display panel here was kind of all over the place. So things were not as they are in the room. And so we spent a good amount of time. When I got here, I had a great volunteer named Josh who sat down and basically just realigned everything to actually match what the stage layout looks like. And that allowed us to now sit down and save more presets that really match what you're seeing, so that you know that when you turn the cross light on, it's actually going to light the cross. And when you do an upstage look, the lights are going to go upstage, or when you do down lighting, etc. So that really helped us kind of get dialed in. So we normally, week to week, will have a volunteer sit down, and we don't normally match the lighting look to whatever motion background we're using, or as close as we can. We don't need to be, super uptight about that. But so let's say we always use a church motion graphics background, so it might be a moving like scenic scape, or it could be kind of just a colored background that has some movement to it. And I'll normally, have the volunteer grab the grid lights and find some colors that match and that they like the look of, and then we'll save that preset according to the number of the background that is labeled from Church Motion Graphics. So we can talk about this more in the Pro Presenter setup, but they always have a number or a title to whatever that graphic is called. And so we'll actually save that under here so that week in and week out, you can save a lot of time just by loading in. If I know that I'm using a background, graphite edge number 11, I can just load up graphite edge number 11 and drag it onto my cue list, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, because your guys' lighting design philosophy, you have an amazing rig, but you're not like doing crazy effects throughout songs or changes. Like, is it pretty much a one look per song that you're doing?
Yep. Yeah. So the most movement we have in the room, and we don't have all moving fixtures. We have, I want to say, 2 rows of moving fixtures up on the grid that we can realign for kind of key lighting and even backlighting to adjust if we need to. But most of it is just static through the song, minus the profiles. So the Martin Rushes, those have the gobos in them, and you can make those like a hard focus or a sharp edge, or you can spread them out into more of that prism look with kind of the rays or the dots, if you will, and the gobo effects on the stage. So that's really the most movement, as you'll see those rotating throughout a song, but everything else is pretty much stationary, and then it's just a color transition from song to song.
And here's a closer look at their Light Key setup again. Very simple. He's talking about the cue buttons here. So I don't know if you want to poke around at a couple of them just to show them how that works, but very simple. Whether you could automate those cues, or someone's here clicking on them, changing the lighting scenes, and then you have the nice simple visualizer up here, and then you've got your folders that contains all your different like presets and such, and then the presets get dragged onto the cues down there. Very nice and clean stuff. Yeah, so I love how simple yet powerful your guys' lighting rig is. So you have these key lights here all in the front to provide that front lighting. But they can change color temperature easily. They can move. These are the Martin moving fixtures, right?
Yep.
Okay. And they kind of have a wash, but you can focus them, zoom them. They're all basically like moving spotlights.
Yep. And they are just like a par. And they don't really come with any flashy effects or anything. They're really designed to be a key light. So their main feature when you load them up in Light Key is that you see the different white temperatures that you can go to and adjust them. And there is a fader control that you can just dial in exactly the Kelvin that you're looking for. So if I want to tune them all to 42 or to 5,000, you can just drag them up until you see that number reached, and then they're there. So, which is super helpful.
Awesome. And then here's a better look at the lights they have above and around the stage here. So they have that really simple setup where you can throw some color behind the band, beside the band. And again, for those of you a little bit newer to lighting design, don't put color on front of your band. That's why these lights up here are all your basic. I think the top temperature is probably around 4,000 or something like that. 4,000 Kelvin. Looks great. Tell us about the haze situation.
So we're running a Pea Soup Hazer, and we love it. It looks great. Sorry, I probably just got the fan in there, but this is our super high production haze setup. But the Pea Soup Hazer is a CO2 based hazer, and so we run it off of a CO2 tank that we swap out. You know, every once in a while we'll just swap out the tank, and when it gets low. But we've got these gauges on there, and then it pumps out the CO2, and then the haze, you know, the liquid in there will combine and really diffuse into a nice thin, really nice haze material in the room. And you've got control on the top for the smoke density of what comes out, whether it's super thick or whether it's more thinned out. So you can kind of adjust that based on your need. But yeah, we just really have, you know, we have one hazer. We run it during our songs at a kind of a 15% effect in light key that will drip it out for 15%, and then it will turn it off for about 25 seconds or so, and then it'll run back up to 15%, and then it'll drip it out for another 25 seconds. So try to make it as automated as possible so that when we're clicking through songs, when we're automating those lighting transitions, that the haze is just doing its thing and it's not something that a volunteer has to turn on or off or manage during the morning. Yeah, so this is our custom layout LED wall. I mean, it's custom because it's kind of a weird format. It's not a true ultra wide that most churches would see, but we've tried to kind of get that look to open up some of the bottom area for other purposes. But we're using row panels. We love them. They're really crispy and clear, so we've gotten some great images up there, and I've been really happy with the product and really easy to, you know, we essentially had a team come in and reorganize them to kind of be spread out the way that they are now. So we could go edge to edge if we wanted to, but we'd have to upgrade our actual processor for the LED. So for now, we're going almost edge to edge, and it gives us that kind of narrow look that we were looking for. It's going from Pro Presenter to our video hub, and then it scales to go to the Brompton processor that sends that output to the LED wall. Let's
talk about this little like central control hub you got going here in your tech booth. So walk us through that workstation. What's it for? You got a Stream Deck there.
Yeah, so I mean, the clutter of the stuff all has a purpose for sure. So, you know, we've got this iMac over here, and then the backlit keyboard is all controlling wave stuff. So there's kind of two purposes there. But I usually use this iMac for a couple things, mainly being Dante controller if we need to adjust something in the Dante network. But the main thing we're using it for on Sunday mornings is to capture multi-track recordings from the Avantis over the Dante network. So we've got a Stream Deck that right now is launching a Logic template that will open our Sunday morning template. So all the channels will be routed already for multi-track recording over Dante from the Avantis. And then I've got a couple buttons here for select all tracks, record enable all tracks, and then just to press record. So I know you can do multi-steps in the Stream Deck, but I wanted to kind of make it maybe foolproof and make sure that nothing got redundantly triggered, if you will. So just kind of had those three buttons ready to go so that a volunteer can walk in and kind of do a three-step process, and we've got multi-track up and running. So that's the main thing we use kind of this hub for. We do run a Sonos system throughout our building. So Sonos is kind of like a multimedia streaming service option that you can patch in Apple Music and Spotify and Pandora and stuff too. So we've got one of those hubs, and we can run that audio off of this computer and then basically access it anywhere else in the building. So we can go change it in the lobby or, you know, patch it over to a different room, and all that's done over the Dante network as well. So I use this computer to do that as well. And it's got other utility things like the RedNet control software, wireless workbench, those kind of things that we'll use to tap into some of our other hardware if we need to as well. Yeah, this multi-view is really here for kind of our producer role. So during Sunday mornings, you know, we'll want somebody to have eyes on all the things going on. So we're only running two camera angles, but I want somebody kind of checking our keys and our fills and our confidence monitors and our timers and things that are going to other displays. And so this is just another central hub for a producer to kind of hang out. So we've got two kind of places that a producer can be, but having one at front of house has been really beneficial because they can actually see what the video switcher is doing upstairs and making sure that all things are firing on all cylinders so that we're not catching that after the fact, and they don't have to be upstairs exclusively. They could bounce back and forth between the two locations. Yeah, this is just another I/O rack. So we've got a Summit rack built for the Wave server integration with the Avantis. We've got network switch, and then obviously the kind of the way that I was taught about Waves is you have a computer that is the server that makes the connection and makes kind of the execution of the Wave system happen, and then you've got actually a full separate hub that actually provides that processing. So one is kind of mainly for connection and running that PC software, and then the other one is for all the processing power that is required of the Waves plugins. I'm probably botching some of that language, but that's the way I was kind of taught about it. But
it makes sense because you have a lower powered PC, or we have a Mac Mini at Grace Church, and then you've got the actual like server computer, Wave server computer. So.
And then we've just got some more I/O down here. So if we need tie lines for anything or network connections, we can basically patch in here, and this all goes back to our rack room and syncs up with those patching inputs there. And again, another sequencer here. So that if I want to, this sequencer is the same as the one in the rack room. So if I want to shut it all down from here, I can do that with the click of a button.
I see you got a decibel reader there. How loud do you guys usually run service?
We on the 80 to 110, range on this decibel reader, we've been running about 95 at our peak. So usually Sunday mornings range from about 89 to 92. And then every once in a while, with a DB reader, you'll see a 95 or something like that. But I try to keep it under 95 for most of the service. And we kind of practice the on-ramp effect, if you will. So first song or two is, kind of lower in DB readings, and we'll kind of ramp it up and get people moving and, get them interacting in that way. But yeah, somewhere between that 89 to 92 is a really healthy spot for us to be, and seems to, please the congregation. But, at our loudest, we're probably somewhere around the 95.
I know we're going to go up to the video room, but let's first just take a look at the cameras you guys are using.
Yeah, so we're using these Panasonic broadcast cameras, and again, defaulting to having only been here a year. This was a decision that was made before I got here, and these are pretty great, for what they are. They're broadcast cameras that they capture a sharp image. There's really no depth of field or dynamic range to these guys. They're a pretty static, I would label a vanilla looking camera. So they get a sharp image. We run two of them, and they're on these tripods with servo lenses that we can do, zoom control with the trigger. So most of our kind of follow cam is really just doing zoom in and outs and pans, following the pastor, and then using the switch between the vocalists and musicians on stage. But we're not doing any kind of pulling focus or any of that kind of stuff during a Sunday morning with these bodies. This will be hopefully a fall of 2022 upgrade at some point. We'll put some different bodies in here with maybe some upgraded glass and get that dialed in. But so far they've served us well. It looks good. On the broadcast, it looks sharp. It's a sharp image, which is important to us. It's just capturing it clearly, and I think it serves our people well. And then it's also really easy to get it to overflow rooms and for it to scale onto another, another TV or something like that. It looks decent over there as well. So, yeah, they've served us well, but definitely another piece of the puzzle that will be transitioning at some point here in the future.
And you got one follow cam operator, and then just one that's up there on the stationary, right? Like a wide angle?
Nice. Yeah, so we've moved these around a couple times. This used to be kind of more on the left side of the room. Now it's on the right, and I've always wanted that second one to be stationary and mounted up higher and off to the side, because we used to have two platforms Now we're just down to one, which I really like the simplicity of that. It cleans up the room a little bit, and it allows for that to just be super, super consistent as kind of a fallback angle if we need to. So one camera operator on Sunday mornings, and they do a great job. Yeah, so this is kind of from left to right, if you will, around the room. We've got mainly a producer station running another RedNet for a Dante headphone amplifier. So this controls the broadcast mix to this room. We're taking a matrix out of the Avantis and sending it over the Dante network to this RedNet that then controls what this room hears. So at any point you can turn that up or down, and you've got the ability to kind of have a custom mix up here, if you will, for the people controlling the broadcast. So a producer will normally be sitting here kind of interacting. Again, on the Stream Deck, we've got some of the things like we've got ProPresenter control and some of the macros that we use across the board, but mainly we've got the Planning Center services integration, Resi shortcut, Church Online shortcut, YouTube Studio, and then our church website and things like that, so that a producer can kind of get to where our stream is going and interact there in the chat or test the audio on all the platforms, those kind of things. So running all of it from an M1 Mac Mini. Not that it's doing any crazy processing, but it's just more of a reference machine. And then we are running an instance of ProPresenter over here for our lobby screens. So because we've got that custom LED wall, nothing is 16 by 9 anymore up there. And so we've got essentially a 16 by 9 machine here for all of our normal kind of lobby feed TV sizes, that we just keep this on a rotating announcements loop during the week out in the lobby. And then our CG1 computer is running all of our custom dimensions for our LED wall with ProPresenter. So we're not syncing them right now because we can get all of what we need out of CG1 via the Decklink Duo, but this essentially is just sending to that lobby feed right now, and then I have control to send it if I need it somewhere different. So that's that producer kind of setup. Again, that's running the ClearComm system, so I call producers will run, this is where you can kind of call and talk to every channel on the system, which is super helpful. Some of the stations only have a couple channels, so this one's really important, so you can communicate with your video director, your cam operator, or your audio lighting downstairs. You have all that flexibility. And then this is CG1. So we call this CG2, CG1. CG1 is running everything to the LED wall, and that's really its main job, but it's also running our key and fill and confidence monitor via Decklink Duo that sits behind this little bay. So we've got the SDI connection running into a chassis, PCIe chassis, and running all the lower thirds and things like that out of this computer. And this is where mainly our CG operators are Sunday morning. And sometimes, we don't do this all the time, but this is also where we're triggering light transitions. So if I want to automate that with Light Key, we're synced up on the BOEM network to run our MIDI integrations. So they can drag a macro on ProPresenter that has a lighting cue on it, and that will trigger the light automations. I'm just starting to roll that out with a couple volunteers. Not every volunteer is really ready to do that or wants to do that. So a lot of lighting volunteers actually love running lights, so even though it's a simple execution, so we don't automate all the time, but if we are going to automate, it is from the ProPresenter computer to the lighting computer. Then over in the corner here, we have a couple different things. We've got an AJA Kumo, which is basically, this CP2 is just a virtual reference panel for our video router. So it's the exact same 16 in by 16 out kind of reference panel, and it's got salvo controls and router reference numbers and things like that if we want to reference other AJA material in our building. So this is kind of our control hub if I want to quickly reroute something. I do a lot of this via the IP address that we have it loaded into, so there's a network patch on the back, and I can get to it via the internet on my phone or an iPad or a computer and switch routing if I need to. But this gives us a quick switch if we need to send a signal somewhere different. So most of the time I'm keeping it on panel lock so nobody messes with it, but if I need to switch something, I can turn it off. And we've got our scope here for just assessing the balance in the room, and a reference for the confidence monitor here as well. Over here, I've got really a simple tool. It has been pretty helpful. It's a monitor that's plugged into the back of our Brompton processor for our LED wall. So this shows me the configuration of kind of the data signals. It shows me the outputs in terms of brightness and kind of the dimensions and things like that, and then what's being shown on there. So I really keep this locked down most of the time, but it's super helpful to not have to set up and tear down every time I need to make an adjustment. Most of the time, the adjustment we need to make is brightness control for the LED wall. So we'll either do that in ProPresenter on the properties of the actual graphic, or we might just jump in here and dim the brightness of the LED wall entirely for a simple, graphic reference real quick if we want to. So it can be super helpful and a really good tool there as well. Over here is kind of the video director spot, and they're doing a number of things, and we've got a couple different pieces integrated into the process. So we're running a Hanabi 4A switcher. The 4A is a 1ME switcher, and it works great. This also has software control that's accessible via the IP address. But most of the time I have a video director in this seat that's running the camera switching. And like I said, we're only running 2 camera angles right now, one static and one follow. So the way we kind of train our guys is to move decently quickly through the songs and capture multiple angles from that one follow cam so that it feels like we have more cameras in the room without having to actually deploy more manned cameras. So they actually do a lot with 2 cameras, and then we also have the ability to just grab other inputs if we need to. So it's been a great switcher for us, and it works great. I love their support team. I can vouch for their support team. They get back to you pretty quickly and have a good way of interacting with their customer basis. But we do have a PTZ camera in the room that we don't use. We haven't been using it for a long time, and a wireless shader, so we can do some shading on the cameras if we need to. But again, most of that stuff we're not using at this point because we've kind of matched the cameras to where we want them to be. We've got them to where they look really close together, and we're good to go from that point. So we haven't used the PTZ because it's pretty outdated and looks pretty bad. So we're choosing to just not utilize that camera angle. And then we record everything to a redundant recording to a drive here on a Shogun Atmos, and this is great for what it is. And again, one of the changes I'll probably make is that I'd like to kind of move more to an SD recorder. So these Shoguns are great for recording high quality redundant recordings, but they're high quality. They take up a lot of file storage space. So moving towards something that's maybe an SD recorder of some sort will be a good next step for us. But have the video director, press record on Sunday mornings. They capture both services, and we just store that on a backlog in case one of our broadcast system goes down for whatever reason. So pretty simple setup there, and another Clearcom producer station that's able to communicate with all 4 channels. So
Is that it, Luke?
I think that's it.
Dude, such a nice setup here. Thank you for the tour. And man, guys, go check out Storyline Church. Just Google them. You'll find them, Arvada, Colorado. See what they're doing online. And Luke, like we said, he's on the Churchfront team. So he's one of our coaches. If you want to reach out, hop inside a worship ministry school. He can help you do all the things, implement tech, build all the systems for leading a team. You took your team, what was the numbers again? From like the volunteers you had when you got here to what they are today? Like how many team members?
When I came in, there were probably about 6 volunteers serving really faithfully, like week in and week out over and over again. And now the team is probably upwards about 30, 32 people. So it's grown pretty significantly, and we're deploying across all worship ministry environments. So it's been a great season for our volunteers.
Yeah, and it's not just about having all the fancy tech and implementing it to the best of your ability. I mean, that's a big part of it, but you also have to build the teams to make it happen. Especially you're a one-man production staff who oversees all that. So guys, check out worshipministryschool.com. As always, if you found this tech tour entertaining or helpful, be sure to leave a like, and thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.